Yogesh, welcome to the next generation.
Thank you.
You've scaled a business to over 8 figures. You've got over 600 employees. And I saw a LinkedIn post from you the other day, and it was the 4 most important traits all leaders have to possess. The first one, you say, break down problems into smaller ones. What do you mean by that?
I think breaking down into small problems is, every problem that you come across, there's so many aspects and nuances of that. And I generally go back to first principles about breaking down those into small little packets of issues.
What do you mean, first of all, by first principles? Because a lot of people aren't even sure what first principles thinking means.
Yeah, first principles are sort of a thought process wherein whenever you see a problem or an issue, you break it down to its bare bones and try to solve it from ground up, rather than looking at objectively or subjectively from a 10,000 feet and thinking about solving it that way. So you actually, so to give you an example, if in case you've had to make a car, or say Elon had to make his Tesla, he had to actually break it down to its bare bones for it to really see that this is the newest EV, and that's how we are all EV users today in a lot of places. So when it comes to business, I think it's always looking at those bigger problems, solving them into smaller packets, and then trying to solve each of them. So to give you an example is, if in case we're looking at a problem from my business point of view of customer commitment and meeting customer objectives, it could be a process issue, it could be a system issue, it could be a communication issue, or it could also be a delivery issue. And there are many more nuances to this, fine? So identifying where exactly this issue lies and then trying to solve it that way, and trying to solve it objectively, and making sure that you are meeting the client commitments. I think that's what it means, it's solving and breaking down to small problems and then solving it.
Why do you think so many people are averse to first principles thinking? Is it something in the way that we're taught to think in education? Is it the way that businesses have just mapped out? It seems like a lot of people I speak to are very unfamiliar with that term.
Yeah, I think often, and this is a human psychology, Elliot, what happens is, we end up identifying issues and connect them to behavioral aspects rather than any other aspects. And generally in my business, I look at this in an acronym called as S, B, and I. And S is sort of situation, B is sort of a behavior, and I is sort of an impact. And more often than not, we focus on the behavioral aspect of the issue rather than the situation and the impact. So what's the situation that has really caused us that issue, and what is the impact it's going to make? Rather than us really speaking on these two aspects, we really say, oh, his behavior has been this way, his communication has been, or her communication has been this way. And that is where we get stuck. So when we go back to the first principles, we are actually breaking it down to finer nuances and trying to solve it. And that, I feel, is a great way of solving issues, not only in work, but also in life.
How would you say someone should avoid that? Because I look at myself and I'm very interested in psychology and the way people act, and maybe sometimes I would fall prone to doing what you've just said not to do, because I look at people's behaviors and their traits. How do I avoid doing that too much?
I think sometimes you've got to see things from other person's eyes as well. Often we end up saying, okay, this is what my point of view is, and I think you get frustrated, or why can't he or she understand this point of view? But sometimes when you see life and world from other people's point of view, you realize there's a difference in opinion, fine? And it's okay, that's a good thing, fine? But often when you want to sort of say, why can't people understand my point of view? And I think what I'm trying to say is making most sense, but it's making sense to you. It may not necessarily make sense to other people. So you've got to sort of use the most important tool that people have, that is listening. Fine. When you sit down and listen, then you talk more, you understand other people's perspective, and then you can see it from their shoes and be able to make that change. And I think that's a very hard and difficult thing to do and to apply in your life, but it's a very important, I would say, virtue of a leader in that sense.
Number 2, get out of the office.
So important. I mean, it's an unsaid thing, sitting in office as a leader, you can never build a business. It's impossible. I would be very surprised if there's any CEO who can say that, they've just sat in their 4 walls and have built multi-million dollars or $1 billion of business. Fine. You've got to go out. You've got to talk to people. You've got to understand from the market and listen to the customers, have your ears to the ground in terms of what's happening and what are your competitors doing? How are they doing better than you? What are your customers expecting from you? What are some of the challenges they're experiencing, from your team and your customer service teams, and broader support and delivery teams that you're really having. And that is the best way for you to understand and improve. Fine. One of the things I've seen in my travels and getting out of the offices, and I attend quite a lot of conferences around the world. That is the best place to understand and listen to other people and get those ideas and then come back and innovate on them. I get very excited with that. I wouldn't be able to do that just sitting in the office. I mean, meeting people, talking to people is what this world is all about. We are social animals. We are about to do that, and I think the more you do, the better it is going to be always.
You must have had a very clear vision to grow your company to this stage that it's at. So there must be a fine balance between listening to all these different people. And if I maybe take it into my sense with something like growing a podcast, you've got comments constantly coming in on every single video of what people thought of your opinion, where you were wrong. People love to talk about what you were wrong about. There's just this general negativity bias that we have as humans. How do you balance having your ears to the ground with also getting to some points that you just go, I have my vision and I'm going to be unforgiving with these set principles?
Yeah. I mean, you've got, where there's a yin, there's a yang, fine. So you've got all sorts of people in the world that probably going to have an opinion about whatever it is, fine. A very simple way is, you've got 8 billion people, there's going to be 2 opinions. You've got 16 billion opinions in the world. So definitely there's going to be multiple opinions in the world. But I think it's all about sticking to your core principles of what you believe in. I'm not trying to make or change the world. I'm trying to sort of live the world by the day, and even if that means that I'm making small differences, and by somebody listening to me has applied those differences or changes in their life and that has made a lot of difference to them, I think I would be very happy with that. Fine. And I think it's important that, I share my story. So not just to inspire, but for people to learn the failures that I've gone through. And using those failures, they probably can, try to fix them early on. Maybe, you're young enough, so maybe you can learn a lot of things and maybe, do this much faster and better than what I would have done. And why not?
What's one of those core principles, one of those hills that you're willing to die on?
I think honesty is a very unforgiving one, but honesty is something very, very core to my heart. Fine, you've got to be honest in what you're trying to do, and this applies to everything in your life. Be it in your personal life, or be it in your work, or be it your commitments to your clients. Fine, you got to be honest in a lot of ways. There are times when we couldn't deliver. We were honest enough to go back to the clients and say, unfortunately, we couldn't deliver. We probably need more time, or we screwed up, and it's okay. It's okay. We're human beings. But I think that is absolutely something that I cannot compromise upon, and I think that's something my team, which they're aware of, that they shouldn't be compromising upon as well.
It's the biggest thing I've been focusing on the last year. I got told this amazing idea from Jordan Peterson about 1 step towards heaven, 1 step towards hell. And what it is this overarching structural idea that anything you do that isn't honest takes you 1 step towards hell on earth. Whether you believe in gods or not, it's your hell on earth, whatever that is to you.
True.
And there's just this never-ending spiral of bad situations when you lie that open up, and they only ever increase. Whereas when you're truthful and you give 100%, you're taking 1 step towards your heaven on earth, however that may look. And it certainly rang true with everything I've done the last year. And I haven't yet scaled an 8-figure business, but looking from the micro up, it makes sense to me that if you remove the possibility of any of these rotten bricks early on, it stops them from decaying and making the whole house collapse down the line.
You're so right. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. It's an old age that we all have heard. And as far as you are true to your commitment, I can see that you're true to your work. You'll definitely go. And I think patience and persistence will actually keep you growing over a period of number of years. So you're spot on that, I would say.
Number 3, understand the balance between impact and intent.
Yeah, impact and intent. I think a lot of people confuse impact and intent from an individual point of view. But impact and intent are such an important aspects of a leader's vision, because your intent might be to be $1 billion company, fine, but your impact might not be enough for you to reach to that $1 billion company in your lifetime. So I think it's extremely important to balance both impact and intent. And when I talk about impact, is impact to the world, impact to your clients, impact to your employees, impact to your partners. Fine. Are you really making that impact? Is today better than yesterday? Fine. Are your teams and employees growing in their career? That's an impact you're making. Fine. It could be societal impact as well. Are you giving back and making sure that we are progressing as a community, as a society? From an intent standpoint of view, I think it's also very clear about where is it that you really want to reach and achieve, what goals you really want to achieve. Because if you don't have clarity and vision there, I think your intent is not very clear. And like I mentioned before, then you're not honest enough, not only to yourself, but to your employees and to your partners and to your clients. So I think it's extremely important that you be very clear about what your intent is and where you want to go, what's your journey like. And it's such a key principle for any leader that we need to sort of apply into.
Yeah, and just from using your first principles thinking, if you don't have the intent of where you want to go, then you're essentially just doing performative tasks that you can imagine a successful business person would do rather than what actually moves the dial. And this is something that I fall prey to a lot, and I think it's difficult in this era of social media where everything's based on looking good, not doing good.
Yeah.
I see so many people that don't go to the gym, they don't care about their health that much, but they'll do an ice bath and a sauna once every other week, and that'll be them for that fortnight, right? And it's such a difficult trap to avoid falling into, doing all these things that don't move the dial, but that are the characteristics of someone that is. How would you go about just blocking out all of that noise and focusing purely on the outcomes rather than seeming like a person that would have good outcomes?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And often when I meet young people like you, and one of the things that most of the people come and tell me, okay, Yogesh, I want to do all of this, but I don't have motivation. Fine. Where do I find the motivation to do all these things? And I often tell them that where you lack motivation, find discipline. Because I think if you don't have the discipline in what you're trying to do, you probably will be ending up finding motivation for all your life. Fine. And sometimes you have to pick one of the two. But as far as you stick to these principles of finding the right discipline in your life, in your career, I think you will continue to grow. Fine. Where you lack motivation. Fine. And I realize motivation is not something that you sit around and it will fall on your face, but you've got to work hard towards it.
And something that I've been toying around with the last year as well is this idea of discipline versus incentives. So you've got this structure of the best possible things fueling you to do what you want to do. You've got motivation, it's very fleeting, it's very hormonal, it's based on circumstances and it changes, it goes. Then above that, you've got discipline, but then above that, you've got incentives.
Exactly.
If you've got people relying on you, you're much more likely to do it. There's a great post from George Mack. He says, discipline is overpriced. Incentives are underpriced. New Year's resolutions have a reported 91% failure rate, whereas people who announce they're going to run a marathon for charity have a way higher success rate. Why does this gap exist? Because incentives are far more powerful than discipline.
You're so right. And be outright and share to the world what you're going to do. And that's the exact reason why I want to continue to share my story and why I want to put myself out there and saying that this is what I want to do. Because when you share, you've got an incentive because there are other people having expectations from you. And that is not easy, but that is something, if you do it, you can continue to progress in your life and career in that sense. So it's such an important aspect.
A rabbit hole I want to open up early on, selfishly, because it's something that I question all the time with intent, is how do you manage such a purpose-driven business like yours with turning over a profit? Because whenever I'm sending over invoices after I've done work that I really care about and I've put my all into, even though because I put so much extra effort into it, you'd think my natural instinct would be to happily send over the invoice and go, come on, it's time to pay up now. I always feel this ick of actually profiting from something that I care about so much.
Yeah, no, I think as a business, if you continue to have the discipline, if you continue to have that, the things that you continue to do on a day-to-day basis, profits will follow. And I think when you're doing any business, profit shouldn't be your first motive or goal. Fine. As an entrepreneur, not many people would agree with me. Profits will follow, profits will come in. But I think your commitment to your work, your passion for what you're trying to do, bring the best out of you and trying to put yourself out of your comfort zone is And doing that day in and day out is going to lead you to what you want to be over a period of months. So it's a long game. It's not a short game. And you got to keep at it if you really want to achieve at some point in time in success out there.
I have this idea of the value paradox, and it's that the things you care about the most, you're actually more averse to doing. Whereas the things that you care about, maybe second most, they're still good, but it's not where your heart is. You're more likely to jump onto those because the risk of failure, even if you do, it's not as hard hitting as the thing you truly want the most.
Yeah. No, you're right. And as to say, when the pain of not doing something is more than the pain of doing something, you probably make a change in your life. And I think that's such an important and powerful statement in the way of what you do in your life. Fine. So unless you don't step out of your comfort zone and try to make that change, you're not going to be on the other side of the fence in trying to make success in your life.
And I guess what I'm hinting at with that value paradox is that's probably, in my estimate, why a lot of people do focus on making money rather than doing the thing that really gives them purpose, is because they're too scared of setting up the business they really wanted to do all along and it failing. Whereas if you're trying all these cheap fix, get rich in 1 week schemes, if it fails, so what?
Yeah. And I would say failure is not an opposite to success. Let's be very clear about that. Fine. It is absolutely not. Failure, if not, it is stepping stone to success. You have just realized one way of not doing it. Fine. And that is such an important aspect that you need to realize. Fine. It's okay. I mean, if you actually look at Silicon Valley, and people who do a lot of startups, and if they have failed startup, they wear this as a badge of honor than anything else. And people look at such employees to join, other companies because, they've gone through the most difficult things in their life. So they've been and they're probably groomed in a lot of ways. So in fact, it's a way of how you see the life. But as far as your commitment is there towards your life and your growth, I think you should find success.
Yeah, and I guess also if you're building anything valuable, there are always going to be teething issues. There are always going to be road bumps in the way. And you really shouldn't complain about those because they're part of the process. And this is what I've realized so much in scaling my media business personally, even though it's early days, and scaling this podcast, is that guests cancel on you, shoots get cancelled, things go wrong. And if you're complaining about that, you're surprised by the natural order of life. Anyone that's succeeded has gone through those struggles.
Yes.
So don't be surprised by them. Yeah. Be prepared for when they come and then tackle them.
Yeah, no, and I think it's very important. And you know what? These are such an important principles, Elliot, because when you and your podcast continues to grow, you will be in a phase where, now I have X number of followers and Y number of viewers. And if somebody cancels on you, you'll have to eat your ego back then as well. And today, whilst you're growing up, you probably are okay with that. But, when you are there, you still have to eat your ego. And I think these are the principles you're learning from today. And hopefully you can continue on this because it's the way how life is. Not necessarily people do that intentionally, but maybe it could be multiple different reasons. But those principles that you have today are the principles you have to live by as you continue to grow. And I'm sure you would.
How have your problems that you've faced as an entrepreneur changed as you've scaled up? Have they gotten bigger and more simple? Have they gotten smaller but more complex? Does it ever fluctuate, or is it always the same from zero to eight figures?
It's very different. It's very different because when we started, it was more about survival. It's about how do we really build this brand. Nobody knew us, so it's all about awareness at that time. And I think over a period of 16, 17 years that I had been doing this 2 different brands that I manage, it's now about scalability and sustainability. It's about innovation. And I think these challenges are extremely different, from what we started. And I think these challenges keep going on as you continue to grow your business in that sense. So for us, from where I'm seeing today, I think it's extremely important to see the new tools and technologies, for example, AI. We were just talking about AI sometime before, about how could that disrupt us? Can AI really take us out of our business in the next, 24 months? And I think it's so important to be abreast of what's going on and challenge yourself and your team in trying to sort of adapt these fast changes that are coming with 1,000,000 miles an hour and making sure that, really apply to your business. I think that's such an important aspect of that. So I think these are the challenges and problems that I faced a lot. And we have to continue to make that decisions in doing that. I think also in the earlier years, it was for us to find the right talent, because when you're starting up, why would anybody want to work with you?
Yeah.
Fine. But now I think it's so important that, maybe people want to work with you, but finding that right talent who has that responsibility, who can take the challenges, can align their vision with your vision and continue to grow and deliver to what is expected out of the vision, I think is such an important challenge, and finding the right team, I'm sure is not an easy, if there was a magic wand who can help me do that, I would be more than happy to really buy that, for at any cost, but it's never going to be an easy.
Do you have any key filtering mechanisms for choosing the people that are going to be working closest to you? Something that's just an absolute no-go or an absolute yes, the equivalent of a girl seeing that a man's under 6 foot on Tinder, they just swipe left straight away.
I wish it was swipe left and right for me. But one thing that I apply in my life, and I think that is something I say to a lot of people, is will issue and skill issue. Fine. I don't mind if you have a will issue, if you have a skill issue, but I really mind if you have a will issue. Fine. Skill is something I can help you develop upon. So not necessarily that every person that we hire, we need to see, they need to be in, sort of Ivy League schools. If you are not fully experienced with that, we can train you, we can guide you, we can give you right education to do that. But if your will is not there, unfortunately, I can't work with you. Fine. And that is a characteristic which is very difficult to identify when you're recruiting. But as a leader, after doing thousands and thousands of interviews, I think you got to have certain things that you judge, and you probably make a decision that, will he or she be the right candidate for you or not. Fine. And having said that, I think it is not that I always am perfect. I've still made a lot of mistakes in recruitment and in hiring, and I still keep doing, and I still will do in the future. But I think it's the way you learn from them, and then you realize who would be a great fit for the culture and who would not.
Yeah, something that I've really implemented, even in my personal life, is seeing this hiring process that Peter Thiel would go through. And he is, the godfather of all these different early investments that have paid off. He would always look for someone that had a viewpoint that they held, that the hill that they die on, that was counter to what everyone else was saying. He's very much a contrarian like that. And I like that. I think sometimes we can be contrarians for the sake of being a contrarian, but if you can cotton onto these things early on, see opportunities that are going to grow into the future, you're going to be far better off than the people that just go with the flow long term. Do you agree?
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I think it's you've got to take some bets. Unless you don't do that, I don't see how you're probably going to see the results coming out of that. And I often tell this to my team that, you've got to experiment. If you know the result of the experiment, then it's not an experiment. Fine. So you've got to take some bets, and you've got to sort of go hard in what you believe and what your gut says, because and it's okay if it doesn't work out. You can go back and probably go ahead and make the change, and sort of course correct yourself. Fine. Of course, there are certain decisions where you cannot go back, but there are certain decisions you can definitely course correct. But unless you don't take that step ahead, it's very difficult for you to see the other side of the light, I would say.
Number 4, be kind and have courage.
Yeah. Be kind and have courage is something my grandmother used to tell me, when growing up. And that is such an impactful statement in my life, and it's very close to my heart. As a leader, I think being kind is such an important. And when I talk about being kind, and I don't mean by being soft, is having that empathy, and having that emotional quotient, in understanding people, making sure that you're humble enough in that point. Being kind also means, giving people an ear to listen to. In that sense. So I think it's an extremely important aspect of a leader, when you really say, you have to be kind. Courage, on the other side, goes hand in hand, because they are sort of a two peas in the pod. Because as a leader, you have to have courage to change. You have to have courage to take bold bets. I think in my life, growing up, these two brands, iResearch services and TechInformed that I learn that I manage today, about 4 or 5 years ago, we as a team collectively were sitting and thinking about doing an event for ourselves. And out of my 6 people senior leadership team, almost about 40% of them were against of doing this entire event. But for some reason, I had that, I wanted to go ahead and do that event. I wasn't sure if people would come to that event, people would buy the tickets, I would have speakers. absolutely had no clue. But then about 2 years ago, we went ahead with that event and we did a successful event in London. And now those events continue in New York. So I think it's about courage, taking those bold bets, and then showing to the team that, yes, we can do it, fine. And putting the entire vehicle behind that, in doing that. So if essentially, if you are kind and if you don't have the courage, I think is definitely an sort of a fearful leadership in that sense.
Well, I think the two go hand in hand. You need the courage to be kind, because true kindness is pointing out the shortcomings of your friends and not being scared to flag something that you think they could be doing better. And this is something in my generation I've seen massively, is that kindness gets confused with giving someone everything that they've ever wanted and more, when ultimately we don't know what's best for us necessarily, and we need someone to help be our guiding light. So I'd love to begin to shift the narrative of what kindness means. It doesn't mean the friend that's too scared to tell you you've got a bogey hanging out your nose before you go on a podcast so you look stupid in front of thousands of people. It's the person that takes a slightly awkward conversation, and long term it means that you come off better because of it.
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. I mean, and if you don't have the if you're not kind and you just have courage, in that sense, then you probably are an ineffective leader in that sense, because like you rightly said, they go hand in hand, and I think people need to be able to see you that you're approachable. Fine. Often in our companies, I tell it to my team that I don't have a no-door policy, sorry, it's not a open-door policy, but I have sort of a no-door policy in a lot of ways, because I think I want people to come and talk to me on anything. I've had people talk to me about their girlfriend issues and boyfriend issues. I've had people come to talk to me about their marital issues. Again, disclaimer, I'm not a coach. But you've got to sort of see and talk to people in a lot of different ways and meet where they are. And I think that sort of leadership is so important, and because that actually makes you feel connected, feel approachable to your team, and that essentially means that then you can convince your team, to work with you, and go around that journey where you want to achieve, and that takes a lot of courage for us to be there.
So we've got these traits nailed down. Now I want to dig into how you've managed to win such big clients. Who are some of those clients that you've managed to win?
Well, we work with a lot of clients around the world. So we work with Accenture, we work with KPMG, we work with BlackRock, and a lot of other clients around the world. In that sense, to give you a background, I think we've got two different brands. Of course, we've got TechInformed, which is a technology publication which focuses on performance marketing. And we've got iResearch Services, which is a thought leadership agency when we look about for brand marketing. Fine. The way I really tell these people is one is a thermostat and a thermometer. Fine. Performance marketing is actually the thermometer, because it's actually about leads and clicks and views and so on and so forth. Whereas the brand marketing piece, the thought leadership, is all about thermostat. It's about a long term. It's about building the brand. It takes time. It's patience and so on and so forth. And applying all of these principles has really made a lot of difference to the life and to the business in a lot of ways. And hopefully, I can continue with this journey and continue to grow them in the future.
How do you go from getting these smaller contracts to big clients that I'm guessing take a lot more work up front and potentially a lot more risk in terms of the time that you're sacrificing just to give a pitch to them that may or may not work out?
Yeah, no, and I think you've got to be okay with that, because I think it's so important for you to show up, be consistent, be honest in what you're trying to deliver to the clients, and be there where clients are, rather than not expecting clients to reach out to you. As a business, as you're growing up, you can't expect clients to say, okay, I'm here, I've arrived, everybody's not going to come and walk into my doors. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to go out there, you have to talk to them, you have to understand what their challenges are, you have to sort of see if you have the solution to their problems, and meet them where they are and solve the problems, and work with your team to really give them solutions to the challenges that they're really going through. And over a period of time, when you actually get those RFQs, and you convert those RFQs and you really solve their issues, you absolutely are in a position to win some contracts. When you take those wins, those small wins, then convert into longer wins and bigger wins in that sense. And I think is such an important aspect for everyone to understand, because you're not necessarily going to win a bigger contract when you start. It's a slow process, fine. But every win that you have and every loss that you have, you've got to learn from that and apply that into your day-to-day work and try to do better the next time.
Something that I've noticed working in the videography field, and especially with a lot of freelancers that are doing the outreach themselves, or rather not doing much outreach, is that we often fear presenting our work to people because it means so much to us, but our head is over in the space of what it could be in a year. So it feels cringy to present something that feels incomplete and not a true representation of where you're heading and maybe what you would have liked to produce. How do you get over that approach anxiety and that almost ambient sense of not quite being up to date with where you should be to approach a client and say, look at me, this is what I can do?
Yeah, but you'll never be there. You'll never be there. I think, I take this concept from the software development industry is, ship fast, fail fast. You've got to be out there. You've got to put yourself out there, fine. That doesn't mean that you put an inferior product, or that doesn't mean that you put something that you have, it's a half-baked or half-cooked product in that sense. But I think you've done a lot of hard work. You've got to be there and share what you have done so far. And then let the feedback come to judge you, because in our eyes, we are the best of the best of the best, fine. We've done everything, and I think there's nobody else who can do better than this, is what we believe. And that's okay. That's a human psychology. But when you actually put yourself out there, people are going to come back, comment on you and question you and challenge you and tell you the areas that you can work around. The best way to start is with your team, with your friends, with your family, and then some of your close customers. And when you get that feedback and when you apply that in your work, I'm pretty sure the next video, the next article, the next content, the next whatever you're trying to do is going to be much better than the previous one. And you always say the first of anything is always going to be the worst than anything that you've done in your life. I was listening to Sam Altman, and he says, in about 10 years from now, you would actually be laughing about what AI is today. About what it can do today, or how it responds to you today. So, essentially today's AI is going to be a laughing stock in 10 years from now. So you realize, how much journey it has to take, for it to be, really better than what it is today.
Well, what do you see to the current landscape of entrepreneurs? Obviously in America, there's been a big shift where people like Elon Musk have now held a lot more power in government. They've gotten in with this election. Is there anything that you've drawn from what they've gone about well, what they haven't done well? Where do you see the landscape in terms of these major investors that everyone knows the name of?
I mean, if you look at Elon, or if you look at Jeff, and if you look at Reid Hoffmans of the world, if you look at Satya Nadellas of the world, I think they're in a different league. Fine, but from all of the names that I said, I think Elon has his own league. Let's put it this way. I think one of the things we should give credit to him is for his boldness of what he's done in his life. Fine. I don't think a lot of people knew about EVs could be a reality if it was not for him. Fine. And I think he really challenged that concept. I don't think a lot of people would have realized that doing something like a SpaceX, like a private, a space technology is a reality that he really brought to this world. So I think a lot of people now have realized that you could challenge a lot of traditional business models and really put yourself out there and come up with a new product and new service. And I think that's a learning that we could take it from him. Fine. Jeff, on the other side, has his own way of doing business, and giving back in customer service. He's an amazing guy. I mean, even if you buy something today, and Amazon's an amazing customer service. You return something, you probably get a refund immediately, even before the products reach them. Fine. And I mean, I don't think you could get that kind of customer service anywhere else. Fine. But what I really take out of all of that is all these examples just tell us as an entrepreneur that limit is all in your mind. You've got to sort of make sure you challenge yourself and your team, innovate, and try to come up with a product that builds and improves customer experience. Because if you obsess over customer experience, it is only then you're going to probably be better at something in your life and in your work. In that sense. And that is such an important lesson that you learn from all of that in that sense. I'm not so much worried about influence these people would have on the government. They are not the first ones who have had the influence. They'll not be the last ones who have had the influence. But I think as an entrepreneur, who's continuing to building that, as far as you're true to yourself and you're true to your customers and you're true to your vision and strategy, I think you'll continue to grow.
What would be your predictions for the biggest change that's going to take place in the tech world in the next decade or two that you see maybe these guys latching onto early, the Elons, the Jeff Bezoses, that you're trying to also get in on early?
See, definitely decade's a long time. And I think, I don't think a decade before anybody would have thought we would have been here with AI that we are. But I definitely feel in the next 4 to 5 years, artificial intelligence is going to have its own curve. And all of us either going to be having to join that bandwagon, or we probably will be outside of that inner circle. Let's put it this way. And what I mean by inner circle is people who know what AI is and what the power of AI is and how it's going to add value to you and your work in that sense. What I'm really excited from a technology standpoint of view, and especially this year, is agentic AI. And I think you applying agentic AI in your work, in how you deliver to your clients, is such a fascinating piece of technology. It's still in its developing phase, but it's such a fascinating piece of technology.
What is it?
It's all about agents trying to do a lot of work for you or on behalf of you. Fine. So to give you an example, if today you say that you want to buy something from Amazon, you just put in a comment that I want to buy stuff for making a pasta. It will actually go ahead, enter all of the ingredients on Amazon, make it, add to the cart, go ahead and purchase that for you and get it delivered, essentially. You just have to say yes to it. And ideally, what you would do is you would go ahead and add them all yourself. You go ahead and make a purchase, and then, of course, Amazon would deliver it. But that's something with one sort of comment on AI. It's doing that job for you. Or it could be tickets to reservation to a restaurant or whatever it is. It does. But this is such a basic example of agentic AI. There are much more applications of that in the business world that's really going to come. And I'm quite excited about that as we continue to see in the next few years.
Do you buy this narrative of AI stupefying humanity, or do you think it can be used for good to alleviate us from jobs that maybe we wouldn't want to do and put us onto more creative jobs that are freeing and give us more fulfillment and purpose?
It's a force for good. AI is a force for good. I think if not anything, I would say AI is just going to challenge everybody. Fine. The way I look at it is, for example, even if you have people who were mediocre in their work, in their career, or whatever it is, fine. AI has now given them the wings to at least come to a level where it is pretty similar to some of the experienced sort of creative people, or whatever the job that they are really essentially in. And from there onwards, the creative people are going to have more challenge to become more creative out of that, because it's actually given them the power to improve their work and quality of deliveries that they're trying to do. So in fact, it's actually going to help you more rather than deduce anything out of that, in my opinion. So I think it's definitely a force for good.
Well, one of the conversations I was having the other day was this difficulty with AI hallucinations and how sometimes it can sort of make up facts or pull so that you kind of get what you want to hear, and how that's going to impact people coming straight out of university that don't necessarily have experience in the field that they're working in, compared to a professor that has this built-in radar of what's bullshit. And it's scary. I can imagine that a lot of these people that are interns at jobs just going into it, they want to impress. They can put forward these statistics that they've used AI to get, but it's hallucinated and given them something wrong.
True. But tell me something, when AI wasn't there, are you saying these interns weren't bullshitting? They are, right? So I think, it's a way, you're absolutely right. I mean, you cannot look at AI as a shortcut to success. And that goes back to our earlier conversation about you got to be honest and genuine to what you are. Fine. You have to add some value to it. You've got to do some research around this to have a point of view that is your own. Fine. And I think you've got to invest time and energy in finding that point of view. AIs can definitely take care of your blind spots. So give you and guide you a thought process that you may have not originally thought, but trying to put across a thought that is not yours, I think you're probably doing a disservice to yourself. At some point in time, you're absolutely right. You will get caught, and you probably will not be, your progress will be slow, definitely.
Yeah. I guess with the interns, the thing that scares me is that, sure, they probably have been bullshitting the whole time, but it's this sort of institutionalized citation-based bullshit where you have the evidence to prove that this bullshit is true. When it's not.
Exactly.
And how does that corrupt a society from within if you've got institutions built on proof that's wrong.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And that could actually lead to a lot of misinformation, which is something that, we deal a lot, in our businesses and thought leadership, because one of the things that we focus is how to really give the right kind of information, the right kind of insights, so that there is not a lot of misinformation about AI or technologies and things like that. And those interns really need to be able to go and research, and that's the bedrock of anything you really come up with, because often what AI spits out may not necessarily be true. And in fact, all of the AI tools, they actually mention, there's a disclaimer that that there is a hallucination in that sense. So you got to take that with a pinch of salt. And I'm sure the person on the other side, the leader, the manager, knows at some point in time, through his experience and knowledge, that some of this is not real. And that's where experience comes in.
Yeah, I had a massive argument with AI the other day. I was in Saudi Arabia working, and I was very interested in the marriage rates between Saudis versus in the UK. And it came out with this statistic that people in the UK marry more than in Saudi Arabia. And I just know that culturally, that is not true, especially with the direction that we're heading in the UK with hookup culture and whatever. So I pressed it on it, and then it completely changed its statistics and apologized. And I asked it, why did you give me those statistics in the first place that you knew were wrong? And it gave me this blah, blah, blah mouthpiece of prioritizing speed rather than truth. So I gave it again a prompt of, okay, take as long as you need, give me the best citations you can get. And it just spat out the same thing again that was completely wrong. So there's definitely room for improvement, and you have to be very cautious with it.
Definitely. You were asking a very important topic out there, but I worry that a lot of 19-year-old taking AI and using AI for their Tinder profiles, I think that probably is going to be worse in many ways than this, I would say. So I hope that, they know how to use that smartly and be genuine to what they are.
How would they use it for their Tinder profiles?
I don't know. Maybe, pick up something, and AI could hallucinate about themselves, and spit off fancy words or an insight which is not true. And if they put it there, it might be completely wrong, in that sense. So I hope they don't use it. That's my point.
A sort of cognitive catfish compared to pictures. It's just thoughtful insights that aren't yours.
Exactly.
I'm sure that goes on a lot. To wrap up this AI section, I'd love to just ask about the future a little bit more and what you see AI doing for people that are in these jobs that can very easily be replaced by AI. I always like to use the example of someone perhaps scanning items at a Morrison's checkout, where things like the nice conversation you have with them asking about their day isn't part of the job description. And with a robot that's powered by AI, you can, I guess, pretty easily get something that scans the food. I mean, you've already got self-checkouts, but I can imagine something more sophisticated. What do you think is going to happen to those people?
Do you know what? I feel that AI isn't going to replace job, but people who don't know AI will be replaced for sure, yes, in that sense. So I think AI is going to be very important for you to learn and to understand what its power are, but there will always be a human element to it, fine? There will always be an emotion to it. There will always be a connection to it. There will always be something that you want to talk to someone, and that will never, ever go away, fine? So in your example, there will always be somebody from whom you need opinions, somebody from whom you need comparisons. And I think that is such an important aspect of it when you're really asking, is this product better than the others? And only an experienced person can really give you that, because who've used that. How much ever you feed that information back to AI is not going to be able to tell you, how that food really tasted, or how did his son or a daughter really like that in that sense, and there's so many aspects to that. So I feel it's definitely a force for good, but the human connection, that is not going to be easy for any AI to replace, at least not for the foreseeable future, I would say.
Until you get AI girlfriends and sex dolls and the rest of it. But
of course,
that's all to come.
Yeah, I know. To each on its own.
There's been a lot of conversation around my friend groups recently about the concept of money and how much your self-worth is tied to it. I actually had a Zoom call the other day with someone that reached out to me, and he was saying he feels like he lacks a bit of purpose in life. He wants a bit of a guiding light in the direction that he should go. He's at university, he's 18. And one of the key things that came out of that Zoom call was that he ties his self-worth to how much money he has. That's why he's desperate to get a job. That's why he's desperate to hustle, to work hard and build up this net worth. how much do you feel that people's worth as a person is based on their net worth?
See, I wouldn't completely discard that money is not important. Fine. A lot of people, in my opinion, a lot of people say, money does not buy you happiness and all of that stuff. I mean, you can only say that, when you when you have a lot of money, fine. But money can actually buy you things that can get you happiness, for sure. Yes, fine. So I would not completely discard that money is not important, but it's not the only driver in your life. Fine. At some point in time, when you have all the money, you got to look at a lot of other aspects of life that's going to continue to give you happiness. It could be family, it could be friends, it could be your children, and a lot of other point of view. Fine. Actually, there's a funny thing on money on Reddit, which I actually follow, which is called as Henry. Have you heard of them?
No.
Henry is actually a club on Reddit, which is called as High Earners, Not Rich Yet, club. Fine, which is such a funny thing, because there are a lot of people who earn, I don't know, millions of dollars, but they feel that they're high earners, but they're still not rich. So being rich and having money is different to different people. Fine. If I have $1 million, do I consider myself rich? Probably yes, but maybe it might not be necessarily same for you. Fine. So I think it's self-worth, it's the experience, it's the knowledge is what you really need to count as, as what you're rich about, not the money that you have in your bank balance. And for you to get that experience and knowledge, you really have to hustle, you really have to work hard, you really have to grind yourself. And only then you probably will be in a position that, okay, I can earn some money, from all of this hard work that I really have done. Fine. But chasing just behind money, and using money as a social status, that is the only reason that's going to get me known within the society, I think that's a wrong thought process. That might bring you success for the short term, but not in the long term.
Yeah, you see it with all of these celebrities that skyrocket to fame, and almost every single one without fail, if you could bet on them having a massive blowout and losing all their money or becoming addicted to drugs, sadly, most of the time you will win, because they think they buy into this illusion as well of money buying happiness, fame buying happiness, when actually it's not connected at all from what I've seen. And even just looking at research into what happiness is, it's got nothing to do with dopamine.
Yeah.
It's not linked at all. So all of these material goods that you can buy short term, they'll give you dopamine, but it's completely severed from happiness.
So what's happiness for you? I mean, I would love to hear from a 19-year-old. What's happiness? What do today's Gen Z people think about happiness?
I think there's a great element of confusion with what happiness means. And like I've just said, it often gets mixed up with dopamine and more hedonistic measures. And I'd put that down to the way that we communicate. It's through these shallow means of TikTok, 30-second videos. I always get frustrated that there's a maximum time limit on platforms like TikTok. They've started expanding it now, but it used to be, I think, 15 or 30 seconds.
Yeah.
There should be a minimum. There should be a minimum number of characters you have to type on Twitter to avoid you just spamming stupid stuff that contributes to whatever problems we're facing. There should be a minimum time limit so that you actually have to have valuable long-form conversations with people rather than something that will blow up. But with that, it means that you've got very shallow metrics of success and perceived happiness through what you see on there. And it's much easier for someone to market the Bugatti that they're driving in Dubai than the family that they have at home and the job that fulfills them, even though it doesn't necessarily equate to what looks the best marketed on Instagram. So I think everyone's got a different perception of what happiness is in my generation. But I definitely sense this ambient feeling that something's off and that everyone's looking for something a bit deeper that does fulfill them, rather than buying the current narrative.
Yeah, happiness is minus the expectations. When you don't have the expectations, of what all you said, is when you really are happy in that sense. And I think it's such an important aspect of life. And you're spot on. I think happiness is very personal and very individual, but it's definitely not materialistic things.
And I don't know when I'll be able to get to the point where I say I'm truly happy. I feel like I'm almost there now because I'm enjoying the journey that I'm on. But I think part of having the mindset that I know I certainly have, and I'm guessing you've had to get to the point that you're at, is that you're naturally going to constantly shift the goalpost because that's how you progress. And this might be the completely wrong approach and I might burn out in 3 years' time, but I'm enjoying that.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying hitting goals that I've always wanted to achieve, doing things that I've always wanted to do since I was a little kid, and then shifting the goalposts and saying I won't be happy until this happens. Because I feel like as long as I take a step back to reflect on where I'm at and that I do have certain things that I've always wanted to have, I can still move towards these new goalposts without feeling too disenfranchised. How have you dealt with that?
No, I think, when I look myself in the rear view mirror, I think I always see it in a way of what I have built, successful relationships, successful relationships with my employees, relationship with my partners, relationship with my clients. In that sense, if you take up the business from me, you can't take away these relationships. Fine, and they're very near and dear to me. Fine, and I definitely can do something in my life, with those relationships I have. So I definitely see, I think, beyond the money, beyond everything else, those relationships, those experiences, those memories really fill you with content in your life, and you take those relationships and continue to build on the journey that you are on. Fine. I would like to say that I'm still young enough to sort of pivot in my life and make a lot of things that I really want to do in my life. So I think you always have to see what is the bucket that you have in your life, and what have you really filled in that bucket. If that bucket is all about experience and knowledge, I think you've got enough to sustain for the rest of your life.
How have you built up your business to the point that it's at? Why haven't you failed like so many others do?
Well, it's a long way that I have not failed. I've failed a million times, I would put it this way. But I think in a lot of sense, I am and I was obsessed over the kind of work that we are trying to do on having the right kind of team, having the great customer experience, making sure that we have a great quality product and great quality service in that sense. And that is only possible when you challenge yourself. It's not a straight line. It's a series of pivots that you have to do in your life and your career. And I have done a lot of series of pivots since I started my journey, in terms of where we are today. I still remember when we started our iResearch services, our first service portfolio that we had created. If I really look at it today, I would laugh my guts out. And we definitely are not providing that service today. And since then and now, we've changed a lot in that sense. And the reason why we've changed this is what market demanded for us to do. Is we could see the corner and change ourselves to be able to deliver to what clients really expect out of us. And I think that is very, very important, to be having ears to the ground and making that change and making sure that you have the right team to deliver that commitments that you have, the vision that you have, in terms of trying to grow your organization. Fine. I've had a lot of failures, and as I mentioned before, picking the wrong team, and, using the wrong technology, and investing in a lot of business or opportunities that I should not have, but you learn from these experiences and you course correct yourself.
Are there any big routine must-haves in your day-to-day life that help you succeed?
Yeah, there are quite a lot of things that I at least consider myself quite disciplined in my life, and I'm disciplined for workout. I wake up 5 a.m. every day morning, and I spend an hour working out, and that's something that keeps my energy for the day. I think it's so important. It's become part of my life. I read about between 75 to 150 articles every day, use AI to summarize it for me. And those articles could be not necessarily related to my work. It could be marketing related, it could be AI related, it could be technology related, it could be finance related, it could be just what are some of the other businesses in the world doing. It could be I'm quite fascinated by deep tech and quite fascinated by climate tech. I'm quite fascinated by space tech as well. So I think I read a lot of different articles to consume in that way. And then I think that's a discipline that I have continued to work on over a period of years that has allowed me to sort of get information from a lot of different places and see how I can really apply that in my own business. And as far as you continue to do that, I think you have a great set of discipline and work and a role in your life and your work.
How do you manage those habits with traveling so much?
You have to find time. It's discipline. You have to be disciplined enough in terms of what you have to do out there. Whilst I travel, I'm glad that I take the leverage from the great team that I have, who manage a lot of work in that sense. There are times that as a leader, you've got to take role of from one of the three people. Either you take the role of a pilot, a co-pilot, or an air traffic controller. Fine. And more often than not, when I'm traveling, I'm probably taking the role of air traffic controller in that sense, and making sure that the teams are taking off and landing on time, the projects are delivering on time. And often travel has given me a lot of things out of my day-to-day work, because when you are actually on a day-to-day work, it's very difficult to sit and innovate and think outside of the box. And when you are outside of your day-to-day comfort, you think a lot of differently, and you see a lot of different things, and that actually challenges your thought process. So I think it probably fills me with a lot of different ideas and energy, which then I come back and share it with my team, and which I'm sure they are frustrated often, that every time I bring up with a new idea and they have to sort of pivot. But I think that's so important for us to challenge what we're trying to do here.
As someone with an 8-figure business, what would your advice be to someone in Gen Z watching this that's looking to maybe just get their first job, get the ball rolling, and they're worried about not having enough experience? Their people that they're reaching out to will want someone that's got a big stack of CVs with 20 years worth of work. What else would you look for? You talked earlier about having strong wills. Is there anything else that you'd give as advice to someone in Gen Z looking to make that first leap into a first job?
Yeah, I mean, even before taking a leap into job, and I mentor quite a lot of Gen Z people on a monthly basis. I would say go out there, read a lot. That's very important. But also put yourself out. Fine. You've got powerful tools already. You've got LinkedIn, which is such a powerful tool, I would say. And now, whatever you're trying to read, try and use tools like AI, and write something on LinkedIn, where people can read about you. At least the person who's recruiting you can see you're active on LinkedIn. The person who is seeing that, you have an opinion about something. And that makes a huge difference in that sense. Because if you're active, you're putting out yourself out there, people feel that, you're connected to the world in that sense. Also, when you're really applying for a job, try and be a little more innovative. But why should somebody pick up a 19 or a 20-year-old? You definitely don't have experience, fine? Why should somebody pick you up? Why should I pick a 19-year-old over me picking a 13-year-old? But believe you me, the energy, the enthusiasm, the deal, the confidence that you can get from a 19-year-old is a lot of entrepreneurs are hungry for that. So I think you probably need to showcase that in your CV, being a little more creative. Use different ways how you can really build your CV in that point of view. But when you land a job, I would say learn and absorb as much as you can, from wherever you can, take that into your family. Don't look about how much am I earning, what's my bank account going to be at the end of the month. Fine. As far as it's sustainable for you, just be hungry for one thing, that is knowledge and experience. Fine. At least until you are have a reasonable experience, where you can continue on your journey of growth.
Yeah, I often like to look at it as the currencies that people think employers are looking for are things along the lines of experience, whereas actually what's more valuable in currency form is potential and this enthusiasm. And you just have to shift things. From my experience, picking up jobs at a very young age, if you come with energy, and you're often going to be cheaper anyway, let's be honest, than someone that's got a whole family to support, that's such a win-win for both you and the client. They're going to lap that up.
Yes. No, you're spot on. And in fact, a lot of people might think, I might be able to get 2 or 3, junior employees versus get 1 senior employee. But you realize, getting that is 3x of productivity, 3x of output. And as far as employers and entrepreneurs can train and give them the right training, you're not only making them prepared for the future, but you're also getting maximum for your work and your goals that you really want to achieve. So you're absolutely right that it's a win-win both ways. But that only win-win can happen, if the deal is true on both sides. Fine. If the employer or the entrepreneur is continuously giving and guiding, and the Gen Z, is also taking that and absorbing it and applying it and delivering the right quality of work, and so on and so forth. So I would highly encourage a lot of young people, to go out there and put themselves out there, I would say.
And you shouldn't underestimate as well how much people like doing other people favors. It makes them feel good about themselves.
Absolutely. And I think that's, I think all senior leadership would like to make, help people, at some point in time, that's something that they really love to doing that. So, listen, I always say, if you're out of sight, you're out of mind, You have to be there for people to know that you exist.
Yeah. George Mack has this great post about you not being overworked, but you're under-rested. And I find that rings so true. I've always naturally had these habits, just by coincidence, of doing work from nice places, like in bed on my laptop, because of the nature of editing. And it's been a great thing to hear, because it's allowed me to do a lot more output and not feel guilty for getting the work done, but not being in a dungeon whipping myself whilst I do it. Does that ring true with you, that you can't necessarily really be overworked? It's just making sure that you have the adequate rests, you work from nice places, you have a good environment around you.
Yeah, no, it's such an important aspect of it, because I mean, at my level, Elliot, what am I? What's my role? On any given day, I get to make 3 or 4 important decisions. And those decisions could either change the course of the company, change the future of an employee, make a lot of difference to clients if I'm investing in a technology, and so on and so forth. Fine. And if I'm not well rested, if my mindset is not there, I think I'm doing a disservice to those decisions in that way. Fine. So I think it's such an important aspect of your life that, you really need to take care of it. I remember I feel myself so disciplined that, and maybe not everybody, believes in me or, works like me, but from Monday to Friday, I every day go to the office at least 8.5, 9 hours. But that's an environment. That's my den. That's my Zen area. That's where ideas come to me. And I really love to continue to do that and be able to innovate and I'll be able to deliver to what my expectations are for myself, and what clients' expectations are from the company.
Here's the post. There's no such thing as working too hard. There's just being under-rested. Winston Churchill used to work 16 hours per day in his old age during the war, but he also worked in bed every day until 11 a.m. He had a nap after lunch and a 2-hour nap before dinner at 8 p.m. before working late into the night. John D. Rockefeller took a 30-minute nap every day at 12 p.m. No meeting was important enough to move this out of his calendar. Advice I'd give my younger self: don't focus on energy output, brackets, working too hard. Focus on energy production, recharging activities. If you produce more energy than you burn, it's impossible to burn out.
Yeah, you're right. I would love to meet the PAs of all of these people, to really understand their working hours. But you're so right, actually. And I don't think there's such a thing. I don't believe personally there's such a thing called as work-life balance. I think that's utter bullshit, to be very honest.
What do you mean by that?
I personally, I don't believe there is a balance that you can really bring, especially as an entrepreneur. I feel there's something called as, work-life harmony, or whichever you put out, work-life prioritization. You've got to prioritize things in your life, be it family or work, and you've got to work accordingly. Fine. And you've got to find what that harmony actually is in your life, and to each on its own in that harmony. But you can't say that, I'm working 8 and 9 hours and that's it. My work is done and now my life starts after that, and especially as an entrepreneur who's doing that, you are 24/7 on. Fine. And often there are times, when I go back home after I spend time with my kids, I have to open a laptop, I have to work, I have to deliver something, I have to talk to my employees if there's something urgent. Fine. But you've got to prioritize your things in your life, and you've got to make sure you have that balance from that point of view. But you can't necessarily say, I'm going to work for 15 hours a day, and next day I'm going to work for 10 hours. That means, I've really managed my, 25 hours of the week already. That doesn't work that way.
I want to finish with a summary. What one piece of advice would you give to someone scaling from $0 to $10,000, just starting out? What advice would you give from the first 10K to 100K? And then what would you give from 100K to $1 million?
I think for all three, you have to be very honest to yourself what you're really doing, and one of the things I would say, which is common for all of three of this, is find your why. Fine. Why do you exist? Fine. What is it that you're trying to bring to the world? Fine. And I often go back to this thinking process, which I find quite exciting in the movie Superman, where Lewis Bennett actually writes, why does the world need Superman? Fine. And I think that's exactly in the life. Why does the world need that new service, that new product, or whatever it is? So if you're really building from that $1 to $10,000, you have to realize that, are you really making a difference? Is your product good enough? Be there, fail fast, ship fast, make those changes. And then when you're then scaling from that $10,000 to next $100,000, apply those changes quite fast and see how you can really adapt to customer expectations, to customer feedback, to customer insight. And then take that feedback, take that small wins, take that money that you have, when you have achieved about close to $100,000, then to go from that $100,000, have systems in place, have a team in place, have processes in place, fine. All of that will give momentum to your growth. All of that will give you success as you continue to build onto that journey of $1 million. And from that moment onwards, you will feel quite happy about, because it is not about you being the pilot. It is about then you being sort of the air traffic controller in making sure that you're delegating you're having the right team, and you're delegating a lot of stuff, and you're believing and trusting them in leading and managing those systems, those processes, those departments in that sense.
What would you say to someone that's started up a business and they don't have a why, but they're hoping that they can navigate their way through, do the correct things, and earn a bunch of money and enjoy a happy life? What happens if you don't have that why?
You have to find feedback. If you don't have that why today, it's absolutely fine. It's not that when you start a business, you need to find a why on that, but you've got to have a moat. Fine, you've got to have something that you believe there's a potential market for it. Fine. Like I was giving an analogy before, if there are 8 billion people in the world and there are 2 ideas of business ideas every day, you've got 16 billion ideas every day. Why should your idea be any different than any of those ideas? Fine. But if you are happy to work on that idea and action that idea, that really matters. But when you really action that idea, even if you don't have the why today, take the feedback as early as possible. Be open to that. Fine. Put your number out there. Fine. Let people come back and call you, message you, email you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. As soon as you take that feedback over the course of your journey, you will find what your why is, what your difference is. Fine. Like I said, I think when we started, our why was different than what it is today. So you'll never be having the same why. But I think as you grow, as new technologies come in, you've got to pivot and change. And it's never a straight line.
Yogesh, thank you so much for coming on The Next Generation. Where can people find more of your work if they're interested to do so?
They can hit me up on LinkedIn. Of course, that's the best place that you can reach out to me, connect with me, and learn from my journey.
Beautiful stuff. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.